Hi, friends. I'm Scott Giles, and welcome to Power Talk, my podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I cover topics related to spirituality, hypnotic coaching, and the hypnotic arts and sciences in general. If you'd like to know more about my professional work or sign up for my free e-newsletter, Power Lines, check out my website, which I'll tag at the end of this video. Today I want to talk about what sounds like an oxymoron: wise selfishness. Now, this goes back to a time when I really learned something important about myself and the life that I was living. I was a parish minister at the time, serving a congregation known to be difficult to work with. I was myself working an insane number of hours and was spiritually and energetically depleted. The congregation hired a consultant to help us find a way forward. Our consultant was a brilliant man named the Reverend Roy Oswald from a parish consulting agency that existed at the time called the Alban Institute. He worked with our leadership and with me for a long weekend. Then he took me aside to give me a warning about the amount of time I was working. Scotty said, "You can't keep spending yourself for other people. If you do that, you will become de-energized." I was already there. "And if you become de-energized enough, you'll become depressed. And if you keep that up, you will get sick." Well, years later, working in my community ministry of hypnotic medical coaching, I realized how right he was. And the phenomena of being insufficiently selfish causes adverse health outcomes that I see all the time in my clientele. And that intervention by Reverend Oswald taught me that I needed to do a self-analysis and to become a little more self-protective, even while continuing to be devoted and involved in the mission of my church. I was recently reminded of this by an article in the New York Times in January 2023 by Dan Harris. Harris was interested in the drive that people feel to help others, yet he wanted to find some advice to be able to do that in a healthy way. And so he traveled to Dharamsala, India, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives in exile from Tibet. Harris reports that the 87-year-old Dalai Lama teaches that simple selfishness, defined as individual dominance, greed, and will to power, is both foolish and counterproductive. While you can find examples of people who seem to pull it off, in reality, his belief is that they're only happy outwardly. As a result of that, he calls this idiot selfishness. Now, in this, I'm reminded of the 1965 song by the musicians Simon and Garfunkel, entitled Richard Cory, based on a poem written by Edwin Robinson in 1897. The lyrics begin by setting the stage. "They say that Richard Cory owns one half of this whole town, with political connections to spread his wealth around. Born into society, a banker's only child, he had everything a man could want: power, grace, and style. The papers print his pictures almost everywhere he goes. Richard Cory at the opera, Richard Cory at the show, and the rumors of his parties and the orgies on his yacht. Oh, he surely must be happy with everything he's got." The lyrics then go on to tell us about the singer who does not have the advantages of Richard Cory. But I work in his factory and I curse the life I'm living, and I curse my poverty, and I wish that I could be, oh, I wish that I could be, oh, I wish that I could be Richard Cory. And then the song completes with a surprising ending. He freely gave to charity, he had the common touch, and they were grateful for his patronage and they thanked him very much. So my mind was filled with wonder when the evening headlines read, Richard Cory went home last night and put a bullet through his head. Sometimes the people who seem the most successful are actually the most miserable and self-destructive. Instead, the Dalai Lama is an advocate for kindness, what he calls wise selfishness. He believes that the inboard penchant for self-interest is okay, but the wise person realizes that tempering that with compassion makes you happier. Interestingly, contemporary research confirms this. Kimo Erickson published a study about this in the Journal of Personal Psychology in March 2020. The article is entitled Generosity Pays. Selfish people have fewer children and earn less money. The implication being that people who are not selfish in the idiot sense of that have more children and more money. The finding was that people who are generous with their time, who don't always strive to come out on top every single time, actually do better overall. Now, there is an important qualification. People who are insufficiently selfish, like I was when I was overworking and overfunctioning in my parish ministry, people who never put their own self-interest first do not do as well as those who are generous, but who do so while keeping their own interest in mind. These people, the people who are generous, compassionate, while also keeping their own interest in mind too, are consistently shown to be the most successful members in any organizational system. Now, no one likes a selfish person, and as we see with the example of Richard Cory, very selfish people can be miserable. But those who are compassionately self-interested do well. They don't spend themselves and make themselves sick by overfunctioning, but they're not so self-serving they can't connect with others too. This is the teaching of the Dalai Lama, who cleaves in this regard to the teaching of the Buddha, that right livelihood is important, and right livelihood does not preclude material success. You just need to be successful in a compassionate way. And while this is a notable departure from the way self-interest is thought about in our culture, in 2014, a man named Robert J. Ringer published a book titled Looking Out for Number One, which became one of the New York Times top 10 best-selling motivational books of all time. The idea, and advocated in that book, is to get ahead by any legal means possible and never give the other person a break. This is what the Dalai Lama calls idiot selfishness. Well, a lot of people I know took Ringer's advice to heart, and by so doing, in my opinion, messed themselves up and kept generations of psychotherapists and couples counselors in business. The fact is that research actually shows that idiot selfishness is in fact idiotic. Wise selfishness, keeping your own interest in mind while trying also to be generous and compassionate is far better. Well, in my own life, I try to keep this in mind these days. I do try to be generous with my time, while still being sure that, I get paid for my core work. I always round up the store purchase with the extra few coins that go to charity. Lindsay and I give as generously as we can to those charities we believe in, and simply, I find I'm happier this way, and I'm certainly a whole lot healthier. I was supposed to have been dead a long time ago. And I never want to be like Richard Corey. Hey, thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject. You are invited to join me. It helps me a lot if you let others know about my work and my videos, so please like, share, and subscribe. And if I can be of help to you, don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great week.